turmoil tonight, real turmoil, as rioters set fires and forced the cancellation of a speech by writer Milo Yiannopoulos. Fox's Trace Gallagher has more on what's going on there tonight. Trace?
And if you look at these pictures, Tucker, you can see, I mean, these guys are burning flags. They are busting windows. Right now, the entire campus at UC Berkeley is on lockdown. The police are trying to disperse the crowd, but so far, they're not going anywhere. You can see the fire right there. The teachers or the administrators are up on top of the building trying to spray fire extinguishers down. This was all over a speech by Milo Yiannopoulos. As you said earlier, he, of course, is a Breitbart writer. And the push tonight was to start this push so that campuses like UC Berkeley that are considered sanctuary campuses, which means they harbor illegal immigrants. They will not work with the federal government when it comes to illegal immigrants. They were trying to start this push to get federal dollars taken away from these UC campuses. Anybody who does not know Janet Napolitano, who is the former head of Department of Homeland Security, former Arizona governor, she is now the president of the UC system. And right after Donald Trump was elected, she made this push to start this sanctuary campus policy that they would not comply with the feds. And what the Republicans on campus and what this speech was about tonight was to try and get this campus and other UC campuses, get federal dollars taken away from them if they are not going to abide by federal law. This speech was supposed to start tonight at around 6 o'clock. Well, they canceled it at 5 o'clock. The riots really began around that same time. And now you can see the crowd, it seems to be dispersing. Half the signs are anti-Milo signs. The other half are anti-Trump signs. So there's clearly a bigger issue going on here. The young Republicans on campus who are putting this thing on were told they could have the speaker, but they would have to pay the cost of the extra security, and they said fine. But of course, the protests, as you can see, have been ongoing now for a couple of hours, and police are having a difficult time trying to disperse this crowd. But the entire campus remains on lockdown tonight, except for these people who apparently won't leave. Tucker.
So, Trace, what exactly are we looking at? Do you know? We've got pictures here which are either live or just briefly delayed, and it appears to be some kind of vehicle. I can't tell what it is. It's a husk, a burned-out husk. What is that?
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's like a to be honest, I don't know what that vehicle is. It looks like there's a wheel on top. I don't know if that is some kind of a vehicle. If you know, Jessica, just yell out at me. But I know they've been, you can see pictures earlier, they're up and they're slamming and busting into the windows. They've been throwing stuff at the police officers around there. They've been carrying protest signs around. They've been lighting flags on fire. And when one fire is put out, they go up and they light another one. Right now, they look to be just kind of standing around. But there is clearly an element of this crowd that is trying to stir things up. They think it's partly teachers. There are a lot of students there, and there are a lot of outsiders that came specifically to protest Milo Yiannopoulos' speech tonight on campus. So the breakdown, we don't know. Some of these pictures are from earlier. This is not the campus. That's in downtown Berkeley itself. You can see the campus right there, and when they kind of widen out, you can see that there is a fairly sizable crowd on hand for this. And again, it looks like it could be some kind of a cart that was overturned and then lit on fire. But quite honestly, I'm unclear. A trailer of some sort, maybe like a food trailer of some sort that might be, Tucker.
With the tires burned off. These pictures are a little confusing, Trace, because there's no evident law enforcement presence. People are standing around this burning vehicle like it's a campfire. You don't. Where are the cops here?
They're there. I mean, it's kind of hard to see them, but we've been watching this for a while now. They're there. I just don't know exactly where they are. I mean, they were inside the building. They were on top of the building. They were surrounding this. But they are certainly not being aggressive. I mean, look, you're talking about UC Berkeley. The protests here go back 50, 60 years, right? They do this on a pretty regular basis, and they knew this was going to happen. Go ahead, Tucker.
I don't think we have the pictures right here, but earlier we had shots of protesters trying to ram something through a glass barricade, through a glass door, which does seem a little over the top. Has anyone been arrested, do we know? And how's the state responding to this? The city of Berkeley?
We don't know of any arrests so far. We have not heard of any arrests so far. We know that, and you can, I don't know if that's tape or live. That's got to be, that's videotape from earlier. You can see they keep lighting these. We don't know of any arrests so far, but again, this is all kind of a fluid thing. We don't know the response from the state. I mean, UC Berkeley has its own force. They've brought in some, we know they've brought in some local police from around the area to patrol this, but they're kind of in a backed off position right now. They've told people that this to leave. This is kind of a lockdown situation. But as far as tear gas, as far as going after and pushing some of these kids away and these teachers and whoever else might be a part of this crowd away, we haven't seen that yet. But we do know there is a police presence.
Yeah, well, this is the new posture of American law enforcement during riots, hands off. And just to recap, so this began. And as you noted, there are probably a bunch of different causes for this, but it was certainly precipitated by a speech that was supposed to be given by Milo Yiannopoulos, who's a writer and a provocateur, a conservative, among other things. Where's he? Do we know?
He's gone. I mean, he left. So he was supposed to speak, and he actually made it on campus, but he left. As soon as this stuff got kind of violent and they started lighting the fires, they escorted him out. So we were told about 45 minutes ago that Milo Yiannopoulos was gone. He had left the building, and they canceled his speech, and that was that. But these guys didn't leave. The protesters stayed on, and when they were told to push back, they kept getting a little more violent and started breaking things, started lighting things, and now you can see they're just kind of milling around. But there are certainly some agitators there that are trying to cause some trouble.
Right. So the people who committed violence got to speak, but the person who didn't had to leave. I guess that's maybe one of the lessons. In essence. Trace Gallagher, thanks a lot for that. Appreciate it. All right. We are, again, if you're just joining us now, looking at massive protests in Berkeley, California, both in the city and outside the University of California at Berkeley, the flagship of the University of California system. Breitbart editor Milo Yiannopoulos, a pretty well-known figure among younger conservatives, was supposed to give a speech tonight. And you've seen protests outside a number of his speeches around the country over the last year, including at one of the political conventions this summer. But I don't think we've ever seen anything like this, where the protests have flowered into outright violence. He, as Trace Gallagher just said, left the scene, not voluntarily, without speaking, after the crowd began burning things at one point, and I hope we'll have the tape of this. Protesters, rioters, were trying to breach a glass door with some sort of rolling object. There are reports that fireworks were thrown. We have tape of some kind of explosions going off in the bonfire there, and some sort of vehicle was torched. We've heard that police are on the scene. They are not evident in any of this video. No law enforcement is. So it's a little unclear exactly what's being done to quell these protests. Trace Gallagher is still with us. Trace, have we heard anything from the civil authorities, from any elected officials at all in Berkeley or across the Bay in San Francisco, or maybe from the state of California?
We've heard nothing. I mean, we're checking the wires right now. We're making some phone calls. We've heard no statements, and we've heard nothing come across the wires from any of the officials that are actually in Berkeley. We've heard nothing from the administration of Berkeley except that this was canceled. We just found out about 30 seconds ago, Tucker, that this was one of a couple of speeches that Milo Yiannopoulos was supposed to give at the UC system. In fact, tomorrow night here in Los Angeles, he was supposed to speak at UCLA. Part of the same thing, right? To take the federal money away from these sanctuary campuses. Well, now that invitation to speak has been rescinded, so that will not happen tomorrow night because they're afraid this same thing might happen. But as far as response from any officials, either on the campus of Berkeley or around the police authorities, we've heard nothing except for the fact that it's on lockdown. The crowd was told to disperse. The event was canceled. Milo Yiannopoulos was taken away. But as far as what's next, what's happening, and what the ramifications are if you stay on campus and keep protesting, we have so far heard nothing. Tucker.
So, I mean, the irony, of course, is that Berkeley is the cradle of the so-called civil rights movement, rather free speech movement, started in 1964. And the idea was this was a place where you could say whatever you wanted, no matter what the man thought. And, of course, now we're looking at something that's very much the opposite of free speech. We're looking at censorship by violence, where the only people who get to speak are the ones who set things on fire and break windows. And you're disadvantaged because this is just breaking now, but I wonder if any of the guardians self-described of free speech, Penn or the ACLU or people who are out there to protect your First Amendment rights have piped up over this.
Yeah, and so far we've heard nothing about that. I'm sure we will hear in the hours to come, in the days to come, a lot more about this. Look, we all know that Berkeley is very much a left-leaning campus. They do have a fairly sizable Republican group on campus that actually promoted this, that got the administration to let Milo Yiannopoulos speak. And again, I said earlier, the caveat being that if he spoke, that the Republican group on campus would have to pay the extra cost for security. And they said, fine. I'm sure nobody thought this was going to happen, but they clearly knew there were going to be protests with social media in the past couple of days. This has been planned. This has been, stoked. The fires have been stoked to have, and I mean that metaphorically, to have this type of a protest on campus tonight. But nobody quite expected this. And as for who's handling it and who's in charge and what reaction we're supposed to be getting right now, it all seems to be a little slow in the pipeline.
Yeah,
Tucker.
I've noticed that. I mean, obviously nobody's in charge. But what's so striking, if I heard you correctly, is that the group that brought this writer, and whether you agree with Milo Yiannopoulos or not, whether you can pronounce his last name or not, he is a writer with political views, which he was hoping to express. And you're saying that the school was forcing the people who were bringing him on campus to pay the cost of extra security, not forcing the groups holding the protests, the ones threatening violence, to pay the cost of security. Is that right? Can that be true?
That's correct. That was the deal. Yeah, the deal was that they can have this, but they knew there were going to be added costs. So the deal was, if you want a controversial speaker to come on campus and speak, there will be protests. So they need to have security, and that apparently the Republican club decided that they would foot the bill for the added security. Again, we haven't spoken to anybody from this group, and we don't know if people from this group are milling around among these protesters trying to kind of get their point across as well. And again, we don't know the breakdown of the protesters. We know some are students. We know, we've been told, some are teachers, and we know that some are outsiders. The rest, we can't fill in the blanks because we just don't know enough about them right now. We do know that at some point tonight, this began getting very violent with the fires and the throwing things at some of the police officers and breaking windows and such. And again, we would say that, we don't know who the agitators are in the crowd. Are they outsiders? Are they students? Are they professors? We do not yet know that.
Okay. Trace, I want to stop there, and if you'll just stay with us. We have Milo Yiannopoulos on the phone right now. We want to go to him. Milo, you there?
Hi, Tucker. How are you?
I'm interested in what happened exactly. So tell us. Our understanding is you were set to give a speech at UC Berkeley tonight. You knew there were going to be protests, and then violence erupted, and you had to leave. Is that correct? And fill in the blanks for us.
Right. Well, we knew there would be protests from the social media activity. We knew from the police. I have a pretty good sense of when things are going to get a bit rowdy, and we knew that UC Berkeley was going to be a problem, not least because they have a big free speech problem. Obviously, it's a liberal campus, so they hate any libertarians or conservatives who dare to express an opinion on their campuses. They particularly don't like me. And so this evening we got into the building, started preparing for the show, and people started arriving in black clothes and masks. They were clearly carrying concealed shields and weapons and things. And then stuff started being hurled at the building. There were rocks being thrown, various other things being thrown at the building. Eventually, the ground floor was breached, and I was evacuated.
Who evacuated you?
My security detail. I have an excellent team of Navy SEALs, various other people, and some of the police from the local area.
Tell me if I'm misreading this, but this looks like the nightmare scenario. This looks like political violence designed to squelch opinions the perpetrators of that violence disagree with. Am I reading it correctly?
That's exactly what it is. And what's particularly scary and should be particularly troubling is it not only happened on an American college campus, supposedly in the land of the free, these are these places where you should be able to engage with different ideas, places where you should be able to hear speakers. And students who come to my talks who don't necessarily agree with me but just want to hear the other side, they were prevented from doing so this evening by violence from the left that is terrified of anyone who they think might be persuasive or might be interesting or might take people with them. I am not, a scary far-right, kind of neo-Nazi as some of the posters claim. They put those things on posters to try to legitimize their own violence against me and against my supporters. Instead, I'm just a sort of libertarian, gay, Trump-supporting provocateur who likes to, present interesting arguments. And we have good, fun shows with huge sold-out audiences, very, very popular. I'm probably the hardest ticket on American college campuses. Students absolutely love me, but there's more loud left that just cannot tolerate anyone popular on campus who does not subscribe to their own crazy views.
I mean, I guess the point isn't what your political views are. I would be every bit as outraged and afraid if I disagreed with your views, and I'm sure I do disagree with some of your views. That's hardly the point. The point is your political views were squelched by violence, and the irony, of course, is that the people calling you a Nazi were using violence to intimidate you into shutting up, which seems like
well,
a kind of
hallmark. These are people.
Right.
No, this is exactly the same thing happened when my book was announced. My book shot to the top of the Amazon bestseller chart within 24 hours of being announced, and people were saying they were going to burn, calling me a fascist. They really don't appreciate the irony of that. And of course, if you don't agree with my position, you should be particularly worried about people on your own side trying to squelch this stuff with violence. Because my whole thing is, the left is profoundly antithetical to free speech these days, does not want to hear alternative points of view, and will do anything to shut them down. My point is being proven to me over and over and over again.
It's remarkable. Milo, will you stay with us? We're going to reset into the Hannity Hour, but we want to keep you there. So I want you to stay with us. We've got breaking news in progress. We're going to be right back with live coverage of what's going on in Berkeley, California. It is violent, and it is unfolding as we speak. We've got Milo Yiannopoulos, the focus of this violence, on the phone with us. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just seconds.